Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom. Let's discuss what energy molecules. They were various fire elements, the catalyst for ionic exchange. Please look at this picture very clearly. Modern science understands three states of the matter: solid, liquid and gases. But fortunately, Sanatan Dharma, Akhand Bharat, talks of the five states of the matter. The lowest one is the Bhumi or Prithvi or the solid element. Next is water or liquid or Apa. And third is the Agni, the fire element which burns. And fourth is the Vayu, the air element. And then finally the Akash or the energy matter. And now you can see on the right side the energy going down converts energy into liquid or solid. Energy going up converts into Vayu, the air element, and energy. So the transformation is only because Agni, and that is why Rig Veda, the maximum thing mentioned is Agni only. It's Agni which makes the difference. More energy, higher level, less energy to the earth element, which is ice or water or steam or hydrogen and oxygen or energy as such. Once this concept is understood, I think we can understand very well the different forms of energy which we are going to be understood as the nature unfolds its secrets. The most thing I have learnt is from Rig Veda and Upanishads, the beauty of science much better from there than the modern science as such. Now comes the question of the periodic table of the important elements of energy level. It's talked about at 1 to 20 levels. Let's stick to these 20 levels as such and see how beautiful is the periodic table, how energy levels change. The very first you can see right on top on the left side is hydrogen, which is, I would call it 22 by 21 level. It's the orbital shape. Size is bigger than the next one, which is helium, which is again circular 21 into 21, but it has got more power. It has got helium 4, which has got 2 protons, 2 electrons and 2 neutrons, whereas hydrogen has got 1 proton and 1 electron only. But hydrogen is very powerful energy level, and we know hydrogen bomb speaks volumes, which has been used by scientists during even Second World War. Now come to the question of second periodic table. Again you have process which come, which most important below hydrogen is the lithium, and all said and done, lithium is very powerful energy, is used in computers as well as smartphones as such for the batteries. Leave it at that. But when it comes to the carbon, nitrogen and oxygen is another thing. But what is most important is the neon 20, which size is smaller than lithium itself. The size from left to the right it reduces, from up to down it increases, is again a scientific thing which modern science is talking about. But at the same time, the next in the line comes as sodium, which is extracellular process, which is more energetic than the potassium, which is intracellular. Once this is understood, which is very clear. On the other side, the periodic table, helium, neon and argon. Argon has got 18. Once this is understood, you know the energy, how these particular 20 products within that makes a real difference in the energy level. That way the periodic table and Rig Veda as such have given me the understanding of Atma, soul, the power which cannot be cut, dried otherwise, and how in other manifestation it is seen. That is what we are trying to go to and see in energy molecules of the today's issue. Now come to the question of another is gas molecules. Helium has got gas which evaporates, hydrogen is there, oxygen is there, chloride is there, and so is ozone, which is 3, and sulfur 8. These are the very important gases as such. I think they play a role to us how the Vayu element can make a real difference. Now they come to the question of molecules, which are very, very important. As I've already said, methane is very important, which is carbon 1, hydrogen 4. It has got 10 protons. And the hydrogen, of course, is H2 only. Then you have ethane and methane and ethanol as such, and that goes to the next stage of level. One carbon, two hydrogen to this further higher level. And these are the energies which do give you power from the beginning. That's what hydrogen plus oxygen give rise to carbon dioxide, which has 22 protons, water 10, and oxygen 8. Once this is understood, I think we are very clear how energy molecules are going to behave as we understand energy process as such. Now the comes question of introduction to the whole thing. Most high energy compounds contain phosphate group, hence they are called high energy phosphates. So it is again phosphate, so we are introducing a fifth element: hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and phosphate, 5 things. The bond in high energy compound, which is energy upon hydrolysis, are called high energy bond. Now again the question comes, it is hydrolysis, more of water is added. No wonder Rigved and Upanishad talk about Amrit, nectar, immortal, which came everything, is only water, nothing other than water. So speaks volumes on that. The main purpose of this molecule is to transfer either inorganic phosphate groups or hydrated ions, again water. The inorganic phosphate groups are used to make high energy bonds with many of the intermediates of metabolics, that is energy group. The high energy commons have a delta 10 hydrolysis more negative than minus 25 K. Anyway, that is a scientific term, let's not get into that. But something which is very important, these energy levels are much more important, I think, only in water element. And once the water comes to play, they becomes ionic, and as a result we can understand things better. Now comes to the question, various types of energies which are important. As I have written this picture very clearly, the first thing which is most important is the mechanical energy, the what it mass. Thermal is the heat energy, nuclear is atomic energy, chemical is chemical reaction, electromagnetic are the electromagnetic vibrations, sonic is the sound, gravity is the pressure, kinetic is energy, potential is there, ion, these are very important. But I am adding last the psychic energy, which is not covered by these things. And I do believe that psychic energy is much more powerful than anything, because thought makes it much more powerful. That energy is center, and we can create anything with thought, we can change the world with thought, and that makes all the difference. My entire life I have used the mental energy, the mind energy, to produce the kind of things which was unheard of. Even the physical body, the psychic energy which centers on sympathetic nervous system, can be much more potential as well as dangerous in the process. It's very quick, very fast. So you get to use it effectively as such, and maybe that is what yoga is, that is what Akhand yoga is, that is what Kundalini yoga is, that is what mental yoga is. Maybe stopping the fluctuation of mind would make a person calm and quiet. From that angle, I think we should understand energy level, how these energies can be used to make a difference. But at the end, to evolve and understand the entire universe, you got to have extra energy. Now come to the question of main subject of interest is ATP, ADP, adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate and monophosphate. These are the 3 things which are important for energy molecules of life, which everybody talks about. If you go, when you talk of energy, it is ATP, ADP and AMP. That is very, very clearly thing, but I would definitely not agree. These are ultimate, these are the only things which are energy, not everything. That is exactly I am talking about in this particular video. Don't concentrate on ATP, ADP, MP, AMP only. There are other things which need to be understood. Let's understand the concept in clarity, so that we have an encyclopedia as such for the world to understand the way nature unfolds its secrets in a scientific way. Now come to the question of the 5 vital elements which make very important. All energy molecules have hydrogen, with a 1 proton, carbon with 6 protons, oxygen with 8 protons, nitrogen with 7 protons, and phosphate with 7 and 15 are the same thing as such. 7 nitrogen is completely unreactive, so is phosphorus. But when they form the group with oxygen, nitrous oxide or phosphate group, they become very powerful energy particles, and that is what I am talking about. Now come to the question. Now let's understand the three things first before we go on to the first thing. So adenosine monophosphate is the first one right on top. The chemical formula is carbon 5, H5 and 5. This is pentagon only. Then ribose is carbon 5, hydrogen 10 and oxygen 5. That is again like your pentose carbohydrate as such, so no doubt. Monophosphate is H2O4 and P. So as a result, AMP has got the particular thing as 180. So nucleic acid is adenine 70, ribose 80, monophosphate 80, totally 180 protons are there in AMP. So once that is understood, you know there's only one energy molecule in this particular thing as a mono. Some come to the adeno diphosphate. The chemical formula is carbon 6, H5 and 5 only. Ribose is C5, 10 this. But dipeptide is H3, O7, P2, P2. As a result, this is the formula, but the number of protons in this is adeno 70, 80 plus 8 is 220. What was 80? 40 more than that is 220 in this. 180, 220 as such. And I think that is standing out a difference of 40 in this particular monophosphate to diphosphate, 40 to 80. When come to the chemical formula adeno triphosphate, is again adenine is C5, H5 and 5. Ribose is C5, 10 and 5. Diphosphate is 3, 7 and 3, and that is formula, and in the process you come to the proton number as 260, 180, 220, 260. That is this. Now the question comes up with any sequence you can see. AMP has got 49 by 80, ADP has got 89 by this, and that is 129. This is what Divenki is all about. 0.61 and 1 and 1.61. And I think that is where Divenki comes to play a role in this particular thing very, very clearly. As I have been saying, everything, the nature which is perfect in everything is designed with Divenki and Divenki alone. Now comes to the question of understanding this concept very clearly. The primary energy molecule in cells is adenose triphosphate, which serves as energy currency. Other high energy molecules into GTP, CTP and this. Now the question is ATP I can understand, adenosine triphosphate. Then GTP, CTP, UTP. So there I say it's a guanosine, cytosine and uranose are the triphosphate which are important. That means there is something more than that particular adenine alone. There is more than that which is important, which are used and can be converted to ATP also. That is at the end. Even GTP, CTP, UTP is converted to ATP, we used at the finally, because that reaction goes on inside DNA and RNA itself. Then another two things which come to important role are redox coenzymes like NADP and FADH2. NAD, NADH, FAD, FADH2 also carry energy in the form of high energy electrons, and I think that makes a thing. So now you have many more things to be understood. It is not ought to be AMP, ADP and ATP alone. There is many more combination. With this combination, what are these 4 or 5 things which I was talking about? Let's see. Now you can see the 5 types of nucleotides. You have adenine formula, you have guanine, you have thymine, you have also racil as well as gynosine. These are 5 things which can be formed the same thing like AMP, DP, this. You can also be mono, di or triphosphate along with this can give you the combination, but finally all of them to the functionally at the end might come down to ATP, ADP primarily. Other things also play a role as a cyclic reaction. We will go into detail when we come to that stage of example. Now let's understand this particular energy molecule as such much better. Now come to the question of this particular thing. How these are formed as such by different things is given it very clearly. This formula is understood, I think we know very well. There are 3 phosphate groups left side, and then you have ribose as a nucleotide as such put together is the formula, and this picture is pretty good. Now come to the question, a chemical formula adenose triphosphate, as same thing can be seen. You have the nucleotide, you have the ribose, you have the alpha phosphate as well as gamma phosphate and beta phosphate. Alpha, beta and gamma. The 3 things are mono, di and tri. If they are tri with ribose and nucleotide as such adenine, that is the formula which is very clear in this particular thing. Now come to the question of formula of ATP and ADP. The upper one, adenosine diphosphate, you can only see 2 nucleotides. The phosphate group, there are only 2 phosphate groups. 3 has the 3 phosphate groups. This is very clear. Once it is understood, there is more energy in ATP than you have ADP, and ADP have more than AMP. Finally, one group which phosphate gives the energy which makes the work very well. Kinetic energy or mechanical energy or chemical energy, somewhere along this particular phosphate attaches and makes all the energy group. Now come to the question of adenosine phosphate is an unstable molecule which hydrolyzes to ADP, an inorganic phosphate, and which is equivalent with water. Now coming to the question, ATP is unstable, but it hydrolyzes, put water and convert into ADP, and then whole thing. In other words, when ATP is made, water is taken out. When we put water, it becomes ADP and gives you energy. And I think once that is understood, the role of water as a nectar becomes very clear. This is what I have been saying, Amrit, which can say life is water, everything comes with the water, is maintained by water, everything. All the reaction is only with water. Without water, this cannot be. Whole energy level is water, otherwise there could be dead life. Now comes the question of primordial biochemical molecules which are organic and compound. I would like to share 4 different things. First thing which comes to my mind is biochemical carbohydrate. In that you have monosaccharides, disaccharides as well as polysaccharides. Similarly, protein you have amino acids, but you have poly as a polypeptide and proteins as such. Liquid, as far as lipids are concerned, you have fatty acids, glycerol as the mono. Then you can go to form lipid as such, which are different types, which have less oxygen, more of carbohydrates is maintained, oxygen is reduced, so that lipid can be even later with beta oxidation produce more ATP energy. For that matter, carbohydrate 1 gram can produce 4 kilocalories, protein 1 gram can 4 kilo, lipid 1 gram can produce 9 kilocalories, which is 2.25 times more than carbohydrate and protein. That makes it because oxygen was removed in the formation and put oxygen to produce it. Once that is understood, your mind, the chemical structure is very clear. Then come to the nucleic acid. You have nucleotide as well nucleic acid. Nucleotide is something with adenine, those 5 things which I talked about. Nucleus is like a DNA or RNA, which is structured in all the full together. One piece, and the total, when we are talking of energy, ATP is also nucleic acid. That's it. Now come to the question, cellular respiration, how whole ATP is formed. As you can get the oxygen and food from outside, get into cell, and gets, when the cell gets into cytoplasm and then gets into mitochondria. When glucose gets into mitochondria as such, and how that is converted into ATP is structure shown very clearly. So formation of ATP from glucose is the process in cellular respiration. I think once that is understood, things will be very clear in life to understand how energy molecules are going to help us to understand life within the human body itself. And I've been saying from very clearly, if you want to understand universal consciousness, you got to experience that within the physical body. Your sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, all the 10 things which I talked about in the beginning are experienced within the body. They are energy molecules and they are going to change things in yourself. All the reaction which it takes in the chemical reaction within the body is your biological lab, and you can experience the entire universe within the human body provided you are sensitive, you are pure vegetarian, do not drink smoking, do not drink alcohol, do not take anything which can reduce your sensitivity. Your sensitivity should be 100% clear. And then motor activity conception will be very clear. Anything which can change you from perfect human being who's a pukka vegetarian, no alcohol, no drinks, nothing at all, that person can experience and can do wonders with food alone. And that is what Ayurvedic is all about. Now the question of ATP cycle as such, how this energy comes out and goes inside is given beautifully in this picture. You can see it as slowly you move on to this line. Second thing is how the glucose from outside passes to the cell membrane into that, and how there are two processes of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. This is glycolysis, how glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate, then glucose 5 fructose 6-phosphate, and then finally to pyruvic acid in the presence of oxygen, or lactic acid without oxygen. Once that is concerned, the whole pyruvic acid or lactic acid is finally converted into ATP in the mitochondria, is something which is very clear in this picture. Once you understand how the body is reacting within your body, then you understand how system is designed, how beautiful it is. In the process you will understand, as far as ATP is concerned, it is hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen and phosphate only, nothing other than comes. But all the electronic most powerful things, starting from hydrogen to the carbon to the oxygen to the nitrogen and phosphate, do wonders in the process. Now come to the question of NAD, NADH. In this formula is very clear. You can see the left side NAD, right at the top you can see only single H, but at NADH you can see 2H, and this is an energy molecule which also plays very important role. And in this process you can easily see nucleotide, pentose reticle, as well as this particular group. It's not exactly phosphate, there is much more than that, and it is a double in nature. And I think that speaks volume how chemistry has to be understood structurally, other thing. And I'm sure person who is highly sensitive can see that within the brain as such completely. So I think once you understand, visualize it, you will know how the body is going to react and how many things can go within the human body itself. Now come to the question of two important things. One is exergonic and another endergonic. Exergonic means that energy which is released as you exercise. When you exercise, ADP becomes ATP as such, because the process goes on. That's one part. And as far as endergonic is concerned, energy is required to be used, or expenditure. One is for forming, one is for this. Then ATP becomes into ADP to use energy, ADP becomes ATP to preserve the energy. This process goes on. In the process you can see it's phosphate group as such, and this is what it is all about. Once understand this, we understand the chemistry very well, and you can use these energy molecules efficiently, effectively to make a difference. There is much more than this. I would talk at a later date when I talk about action potential as such, and say how ATP helps in transfer of sodium potassium ATP pump, or for that matter, and you can have sodium potassium pump working very well without ATP itself. And that would I talk at as a later stage when I talk of action potential as such in nerves or cells or muscles as such. Now come to the rest. Let's not, I think is enough for the day. Thank you very much.